work with the public and get that information.
Can you talk about the amount of evidence and the type of evidence that was sent to the state lab?
So obviously, I think we talked about last week, all of the officers' uniform, including all their gear, boots, weapons, all that was sent off. As Mr. Sant mentioned, you have the toxicology that was sent. Bullet fragments that were collected at the scene. Taser cartridges will be sent off for analysis. I'm probably leaving some stuff out, but that it really is a mountain of evidence.
I understand you have a quote from the DOJ that you were planning to share today.
So we have been in contact with the FBI. The question is, should the DOJ, the FBI, take over the investigation? You should know that we are in close contact with them. This was their quote that they gave me from their media relations coordinator from the FBI Seattle division. The FBI is aware of the Pasco police shooting incident. The FBI is monitoring the investigation of this use of force conducted by the Tri-City Special Investigations Unit, comprising several law enforcement agencies in the region. So they are monitoring. They are talking frequently with our lead investigator. So if they choose to come in and take over, they certainly can. Right now, they're just monitoring.
Has anything gone on in those conversations to lead you to believe that the DOJ or FBI is planning to come in at all?
Right now, they're just using the word monitoring. That was their quote, which she does clarify. She says what monitoring means to them is we're following the investigation by the locals because its resolution will determine if we need to get further involved.
Can you put a more specific number on the amount of videos you have?
No, because that number continues to grow. So we have dash cam videos from the patrol cars, and I include all patrol cars that were working that day, and so they're still in the process of collecting that, which cars had cameras, which didn't, which may not have recorded. So that's being collected. The YouTube videos that we've seen, they continue to come in to us. There seems to be more out there. So that continues to be a moving target.
Have all the bullet fragments been accounted for from that day that were discharged?
I'm sorry?
Have all the bullet fragments been accounted for that were discharged that day? Were they all sent to the crime lab? Do we track all of those down?
So we did talk about that. They've accounted for all the bullet fragments.
Well, I guess when you say all the bullet fragments, I haven't seen that information. When you say fragments, there could be fragments that might not have been collected, but anything that was gathered from the investigation would have been sent off to the lab, and that's for a firearms expert at the State Patrol Crime Lab to probably determine if fragments compile any bullets, you know, to make up for it.
But everything discharged that day from the officers' weapons has been found.
So I think, can we account for all the bullets that were fired? Yes. We know where they all went.
Do you have an idea when pictures of the officers' injuries would be available to us?
I don't, but I'll work on that for next week. That's a good question.
Have the officers made their statements to the special investigation unit yet?
So not yet. Another good question. You have to understand that the investigators that will interview them need to know all the details first. And so that's still coming in. And so that date is yet to be set yet. We're still collecting information. That's why it's so critical for any further video that's out there, for any further witnesses that are out there, to come in and contact us as soon as possible. We want to have a complete picture of what we know before we set the officers down and interview them.
Is it clear that all three officers discharged their weapons at the scene?
I think we can see in the video that all three weapons discharged.
Do we know how many bullets were found in Mr. Zambrano's body?
That'll be part of the report from the coroner and the medical examiner that, as Mr. Sant specified, can't be released until they get the toxicology report.
Sean,
yes,
the last two investigations that you've been a part of, I've been in your office, I've seen mounds of paperwork that are involved in this. What is the average cost on something like this in terms of the special investigating unit's report and investigation? Any idea?
Well, when you ask for cost, I mean, obviously it does take time. It's time in our office. Obviously, a lot of time is after what people might say are normal working hours. Many of the deputies in my office do work past I guess the typical workday of 5 o'clock as they have trials. Obviously, this case is going to have a big priority with our office. So there's going to be a lot of time and effort, not just by myself, but other members of my team in the office. And so it'll take some time to go through. And as you indicated, some of those cases don't have nearly the number of witness statements. I think, as we said last week, part of the protocol that SIU tries to follow is getting recorded witness statements. Those statements then are condensed to being transcribed, so it's easy for everybody to review and have all that information. And it will take some time because, like you said, they are very thick notebooks that come to the office. There's going to be, the more videos that come available, the more car cams that had recordings in the patrol cars, those all will be reviewed, along with 911 calls, the radio logs, the data terminal transmissions. There's a bunch of information that will come in, and that all needs to be looked at for us to have a thorough review.
Any idea who pays for all this?
Well, we're all salaried. Everybody in my office is salary. If we have to have our support staff that are hourly, we might have to seek authorization to get additional overtime approved within our office. But that just comes with the job that I signed up for. Is I put in the hours as they're needed.
So the agreement that SIU has with all of the agency, all the chiefs and sheriffs, is when these investigations happen, each agency is responsible for their own detectives' salaries. So we all share the cost. Yes, sir.
Sean, can you say if people who are undocumented in this country come to your office or to the SIU to give testimony, are they liable to be to get into legal trouble with the federal government?
As I've said before, is our goal is not to enforce the immigration laws. That's not our role as the prosecutor's office. We're trying to take all information. We've had other cases. One of the biggest cases that came out in the community was Tony Martinez not too long ago, where there was an exploitation amongst a lot of undocumented folks that had sought out immigration services from an individual that held himself out as being an attorney. So just like we did in that case, people came to our office, they cooperated with law enforcement, they gave statements. After the process concluded, we've granted U visas or signed off on U visas. So we would treat this case just the same like we've treated several other cases before.
And last week you guys said you were still looking into whether Antonio Zambrano had a rock in his hand when he was shot. Is there any update as to that aspect of the investigation?
No update on that portion yet.
Are you commenting on why the coroner has started an inquest? We understand it's quite rare. Are you commenting on what you may have found that might have caused him to start that inquest?
That'd probably be a good question for the coroner.
If you can account for all the bullets, how many shots were fired by the officers?
I think that will be part of the report that needs to come from the medical examiner, as far as his report from the medical exam.
Going off Chris's question, I know he's asked specifically about a rock, but at this point, are you confirming he had something in his hands, whether it be keys or anything?
You can watch the video that we all have seen, and there is some sort of shadow there. But we won't really know any of that conclusive until they're able to enhance that video and slow it down frame by frame. So we hope to have a more conclusive answer to that. Right now, that's still inconclusive.
Was the only place that he was shot in the torso?
Let's take this question first. So I think that's, your question was, again, say it please.
Was the only place he was shot was in the torso? Were there any other bullet wounds?
So I think that'll still come out with the medical examiner's report, which still is waiting on the toxicology report before he can release that. Back here.
How many shots were fired total during
I don't know that we can comment on that yet, conclusively.
Yeah, I would be hesitant without having that report from the pathology as well as the SIU report. That's going to have those kind of details in the report.
Just
Yes.
can you tell us, excuse me, can you tell us how many officers actually shot? Did all three officers shoot? Or
I'm not sure if they know that or not yet.
So based on what you see in the YouTube video, which is what I would be referring to, okay, because again, we don't have the reports back from the crime lab, who has the weapons, who can verify which guns fired. That's part of that analysis. So what I can see in the YouTube video, as you did, it appears that all three did. That is still inconclusive yet. That's just what we see on social media. Yes.
Just wanted to clarify. So you said that the investigation on your side, your special unit side, is already concluded, or is it?
No. No, today's just an update. The investigation is still continuing.
Yeah, but what I mean, what was it that you were waiting for the second autopsy?
Oh.
The autopsy is already concluded?
Right. The investigation had the initial autopsy within a few days after the incident. Now, the family has requested that a second autopsy come in, and we're certainly going to allow that to happen. When that happens, I don't know, but it's probably going to be in the very near future. And we'll also want to wait till we have the reports from that pathology report to review that. At least from my office's perspective, I'd want to have all information available. Just like witnesses, if there's 2 pathology reports, we're going to want to have those before we're able to proceed forward with our review of the evidence. So that's going to be critical for us as well.
When you do complete with the investigation, has any departments or even the Mexican consulate asked for a copy of the investigation, or will you be voluntarily sharing that with groups who ask?
I could comment on that. The Mexican consul has actually reached out to us specifically. They're going to have they've requested a meeting with me personally. I've met with the Mexican consul before. This case is no different. We've established a very good relationship in our community with them, apprising them of things that we're trying to do within our office. One of the discussions we've had previously in our community was talking about the U visas, and they're very pleased to understand that, hey, our attempt is to try to work well with people that are here. Obviously, most of the people in our community are those people that want to follow the laws. They want to get legal papers so that they could fully participate, and we certainly have an interest, I think, in making our community better by assisting that. And obviously in cases like this, we want to make sure people obviously come forward and they're not afraid or have concerns that maybe something adverse will happen. But we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we get that information from them and assist them.
Sergeant Lattin.
Hey, I had a question back here, I think.
Yes, some people in the community have expressed measured concern over the use of force and even about their own personal safety. Does the police have any message you'd like to give to the broader community?
We totally understand the concern, both not just here locally, but on the national scale, the concern the public has, and we're working to try and address those concerns and provide the citizens some comfort. At the end of the day, we do work for the citizens. We have been sworn in to uphold, to keep the safety, protect their rights, and we expect all of our officers to do that. And so our message to our officers right now is go out, police with compassion, with integrity, and regardless of what anybody may say to you, do the right thing. And now more than ever, show everybody who we are, and that we can be fair, we can be just. We need to work at that to educate the public a little better.
I'd like to follow up with that as well, because I think it's important to understand. In our community about this time last year, in 2014, it was actually Valentine's Day, we had a shooting that took place in Pasco by an unarmed man that had forced his way into a home. The homeowner felt in reasonable fear of harm, that both his personal safety as well as the safety of his family was in danger, and he actually shot the individual, and that individual died. Now, we reviewed that case just like we will review this case. We look at the totality of circumstances. We look at reasonableness based on the considerations. That case, his wife was actually on the phone with 911 at the time. You could hear the shots being fired. That individual was not taken into custody. That individual, cooperated in the investigation. The parties were separated, so it wasn't like there was some kind of collaboration. But we look at that case just like any other homicide. Again, that case is ruled as a homicide. Somebody died as a result of the acts of another individual. But I think that's the commitment that we have, at least from my office, is that we're going to review this thoroughly. And that's going to require us to look at all evidence, not just the video. We have several cases that come to our office where we have what we think is very helpful. We have it on video. Our DUI, we have several traffic stops. They're captured on DUI video. But, some of those cases actually go to trial where you think, well, wait a minute, it's on video. You got the guy stumbling out of his car. You've got the slurred speech. You've got the breath test that shows that they're way over the legal limit. Well, what's the point of a trial? That's the important part about our system of justice, is we need to make sure that we review every piece of evidence before we make a decision. I take that very seriously. The deputies that work for me in my office take that seriously. And frankly, I think all the law enforcement officers, especially those in this investigation, they want to make sure this is the most transparent, the most thorough investigation possible, so that we maintain that trust that we have in the community. And I think that's what separates our community apart from other areas that we've seen across the country is because people recognize this is going to take time, but they recognize that we will thoroughly evaluate that, and we're trying to be as transparent as possible and give information out as soon as we can. But we also want to protect the integrity of the investigation, and that's why, you know, I wish we could have all the details available for you now. I haven't seen all the details yet, but I too am looking for having everything so that we can thoroughly evaluate this as quick as possible.